Welcome to the Power Up Podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Scullion. Join me for some powerful conversations with members of the Substation Design Solutions Industry Consortium, the SDSIC. I'll chat with members about the consortium, some innovative solutions, how they're implementing some different technologies, even some of the amazing projects that they're working on to address the growing needs of our power grid. So thanks for listening today. Let's get started. Today's guest is Jeff Spence, Vice President of Strategic Innovations at Ampirical Solutions and leading the charge at Ampirical, specializing in services and solutions for the design and maintenance of safe, secure, and cyber-aware power systems environments. Jeff has been a member and a terrific supporter of the SDSIC since its very inception 10 years ago this year. Thanks for joining me today, Jeff. Great to have you here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Let's kick things off in addressing the fact that this year is our 10th anniversary of the SDSIC, and you've been a huge supporter since we initially kicked off the idea. I don't think most members even know that you were one of the first advisors in getting things set up and addressing what the consortium could potentially provide for utility customers and engineering firms out there.
Yeah, absolutely. When you say pre-SDS consortium, I remember a conversation distinctly that, we were discussing whether or not utilities would pay per download for content and stuff like that. And, we went around the circle on that one several times and finally concluded that we didn't think there was much of a market there. And then the SDS consortium came along. Of course, that's something that's, near and dear to my heart when it comes to 3D and doing things intelligently in design. And so I was chomping at the bit to be a part of it and see what we could do to contribute.
Yeah, and you guys have been amazing over the years. I mean, I don't think a lot of folks in the SDSIC, I don't think a lot of our members know just how much time you and I had spent on phone calls and even going through some of the early R&D we were doing on just the SDS tools with AutoCAD Electrical and Inventor. And you guys were pretty open with spending a lot of time with us and going through some of the features and functionality that were kind of needed in the industry.
Well, we're certainly vested in the SDS consortium, our clients, and helping them make the transition into an intelligent tool set, right? Not just doing 3D, but also when it comes to P&C, right? We've been doing that, invested a lot of time, money, and effort in building a large library and spending time training our team members and truly trying to help any way we can this industry to move into the next sector.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, you guys have been sponsoring, and you've been, part of every single, I think, monthly call, leadership call, helping us plan things out and everything. So it's been pretty awesome. So, this is going to be our 10th year, and we're going to Nashville, kind of where it all started. On the first meeting was in Nashville 10 years ago. So, what would you like to see happening in the 10th year as we head to Nashville?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm excited to see utilities and co-ops and municipalities really starting to adopt it. One thing that we've seen at the end of in 2020 and going into 2023, the co-op market and the municipality market seems to be almost easier to adopt because they don't have so much legacy data, right? And so us working with some of our clients that way, helping them adopt into, Inventor, using the toolkit and into AutoCAD Electrical and using the toolkit and really helping them make some major leaps and bounds. And so, what I'm hoping for 2023 is the continual momentum and not just the IOU market, but also co-ops and municipalities, and really driving the utility market into technology. And so I'm excited about that.
That's great. Yeah, it's pretty much one of the core ideas around this podcast was to try to elevate the voices a little bit, right? And kind of, we've been often stuck in design and even hate to say the word drafting, but still in the drafting and design space, and trying to just elevate the conversation in the SDSIC and kind of rope in some of the kind of higher level discussions around time savings and predictive analytics or any kind of stuff like that. So are you going to be joining our Innovative Solutions Committee?
Absolutely. This past year, I moved from being basically VP over substation and P&C, and of course, CAD Solutions. to really having a niche or more concentrated focus on CAD solutions and innovations and strategic innovations precisely, not just for substation or relaying, but also for operations and stuff like that. So no, I'm excited about the focus. To be honest with you, it was hard for me to let go of relaying and substation because I've been doing it for so long.
Right.
But the focus, I couldn't disagree with Matthew. The focus was needed. And so with that focus, we've actually picked up momentum on some of the things that we're doing and some of the changes we are hopefully going to influence inside of Ampirical, and as such, hopefully have that benefit our clients as well.
Yeah, that's great, Jeff. So I'm going to take you off on a bit of a tangent, as you just
Sure.
talked about. So, I'm interested in how long you've been doing that, because I know I met you when Empirical was fairly early on, I guess.
Yeah, technically, in our new building, we have a wall that has a conduit with a timeline with different plaques on it. And so actually predating Empirical, back in 2006, I was actually published in a different magazine for a different software company doing 3D substations with, in the power industry, right? So we've been doing it for a long time. It kind of started off when we were at Entergy at the time working with EOSI. And Mark approached me, one of my partners, he's retired now, but approached me and asked me, hey, do you think we can do this substation design in 3D? And my answer to him was, sure, we can do anything with time and money, right? And he said, no, can we really do it? I said, yeah, we certainly can. And so that really started our journey then, right? And, we're very fluent in several different softwares when it comes to 3D and when it comes to PNC. And so, we've always kind of prided ourselves being software agnostic. And whatever our customers need, we can have customers come to us and ask us about, hey, which one would you recommend? And that conversation for me always starts off with what software are you using right now? Because a lot of times that makes your transition a bit easier. Now that predates the consortium, right? That conversation changed when the consortium came along and we started trying to team and partner to have one voice. That became a much different conversation.
Yeah, and I think it's fairly often that we see, every utility and engineering firm using pretty much the entire gamut of software. It's not like anyone's committed to one single thing. And I don't think anyone could claim they're, singularly a Bentley house or an Autodesk house, right? I mean, we see pretty much everything in use, and some of the newer things now with open source and everything. There's no limit to the software that's being used these days. And no, that's true. And I appreciate the effort in our leadership, the SDSIC. You've been a great voice in kind of helping us bring some of those things to light and trying to have those conversations about different software vendors and, how we approach that, getting them into the SDSIC, which would be big for our 10th year coming up, right?
Kind of going back to your earlier question about 2023, the other thing I'm excited to see is, with Bentley coming on board, and really the change that's happened with the SDS consortium, and that is really trying to look at what are the best products that they can bring to the table for the different opportunities and solutions, right? And so I think that's going to drive healthy competition, and that healthy competition is going to help all that's involved. And so I'm excited about being a part of that as well. I didn't mean to revert back to that. Sorry.
So talk to me a little bit about some of the other things you got going on. You mentioned Empirical and some of the other concepts and ideas you guys are pushing through. What's going on?
Yeah, with the more narrowed focus this year for me, with strategic solutions, CAD solutions as part of that. We have a company called Ampirical, which specializes in the cyber aspect of our business. And most people think cyber, they first go to cybersecurity, and Ampirical absolutely is involved with that. We have several softwares that actually have a patent associated with that as well. But we do a lot of things there, right? And so on Ampirical, we don't just do cybersecurity, which we have that, but we also do relay settings and some other things that we're looking there to automate relay settings and RTU configurations. So, because that really is a part of the PNC design and physical design. So there's no reason why we can't take that same data and push it and help influence some of these other areas that we're doing. And so in Ampirical, we also have a sister company called Grid Intel. So if we have software that we've produced for our use, we've got enough of inquiries asking us to sell it that we started a company called Grid Intel that we can actually sell some of those software solutions through. So, as we're looking to automate, as we're looking to leverage data to its max, sometimes that results in actual one-off programs. We try not to be in that business as much as possible, but sometimes we push the limits and we have to actually create things ourselves. So, that's kind of where we're at. And, what I'm focused on this year and the years to come is how to maximize that, right? Because we have this data and it's all about data. I heard a podcast earlier or last year about data's new oil, right? And I absolutely believe it, right? So if we can get that data and we can massage that data and push out these different softwares, then it's only going to make our life better and help our engineers stay focused on engineering and not all the graphics and everything. The handoff from engineering into, a SCADA solution like RTU configurations or into, doing relay settings and really help those handoffs be somewhat seamless. And so that's I'm really excited about how that's going to go for us in the months to come.
Yeah, it's so well needed now, right? We keep hearing about all these threats on the open air substations and even some folks breaking into the station and stealing components. It's a little bit unbelievable these days.
Yeah, we actually have a software called Vigilant Grid where we've had at least 3 different things that happened last year. We installed it on one of our customer system, and their master RTU flag had ransomware and malware on the master RTU. They took that one out of service, put the backup in. It had the same ransomware on it. Took that one out of service, put the second backup in. It didn't have it. Sent the first one to us to do, forensics on it to understand why and how it got on there. And so we were able to give them that report, and also report that up to the government on how some of that stuff got there. But
Wow.
pretty interesting. We had another situation where, just last week we had one of our customers, our clients, call us and say, "Hey, Vigilant Grid showed me I'm having somebody trying to brute force into my SCADA system." And so we were able to take that domain area that was coming from and, kind of blacklist it so they had no more access. But it's crazy how much stuff's out there from a cyber standpoint. How much malicious activity is going on, and so oftentimes we think of cyber just as an IT solution, and it's so much more than that. If we can have certain things and analytics in there, or ways to report some of these things that are going to be coming down from IEEE when it comes to cyber. We're very involved in that. Nathan Wallace is a gentleman I work with, very blessed to be working with him, very intelligent, very involved in IEEE when it comes to cybersecurity. And so some of these things are going to be coming down the pipe to some of our utilities and our customers. And much like we have been with SDS Consortium, we want to be involved in supporting that and pushing that and seeing what we can do to support our clients in this industry.
Yeah, that's good. I remember, I think Nathan spoke in Kansas City, right? It was nice to have him there and having that expertise that's so well needed. And again, elevating the voice of the SDSIC, having some more critical conversations, if you will, right? Not just focusing solely on design. It's the start of everything, but it's just being able to elevate that, have those conversations about cybersecurity has been awesome.
One of the things he's talked about there is not just looking at cybersecurity after the fact, but making it into the design. So as we do the design, we are thinking about cybersecurity, right? And how we go about doing it, how we go about executing it, how we go about maintaining it, right? All those things are critically important because, quite frankly, we as the human factor are the weakest link.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's fun. Like I think about it now, all the electric vehicles being plugged in and the solar and all this kind of stuff. There's going to be so many different ports of entry than there was before, right? It's going to be so well needed.
And we had another client that actually had one of their employees go to Starbucks and plug the machine in through the Wi-Fi through Starbucks, and then came back to the office and went in, and he actually downloaded what happened coming through his machine, corrupted our whole client, and basically was trying to make their whole infrastructure, computing infrastructure, a data mining for Bitcoin, right? And so that's not what they wanted to happen.
Wow, that's pretty special.
Yes, indeed.
All right, man. So I'm going to circle all the way back to the SDSIC and kind of, obviously the Power Up podcast is going to be through the SDSIC. It's really to have these conversations with members such as yourself. And there's not too many Jeff Spences because you've been with us from the very early days of pre-SDSIC. But still, what kind of advice would you give to, say, other engineering firms or services companies coming into the SDSIC maybe for the first time?
Another great question. I guess the first advice I would give is it's great working with people that are like-minded. You have the SDS Consortium. Don't just come to them, the SDS Consortium, in the large events. Reach out to the members that have some track record, have a bit of a resume of successful implementations and using this not just on building a substation model or testing it out, this, that, and the other, but actually using it all the way through construction, because there's so much that you can learn at the tail end that's going to affect the front end. And so, truly leverage SDS Consortium team as a consultant for you. Don't do it by yourself. Trying to navigate that journey by yourself, you're going to spin off in the weeds and get lost in some places if you're not careful. You're going to step into some big holes. You don't have to. The SDS Consortium is here to support you. We want to bring your voice along with our voice to this industry to make it better, right? And the only way we can do that is by teaming for success. And I'm excited to be fortunate to work with a lot of men and women, at Ampirical, at Cyberical, but even more so than that, at the SDS Consortium, that really have that same mindset. And so the very first one I came to, I promised at the SDS Consortium to stick my sword in the sand, even with my competitors, and try to collaborate to see how we can make this better. And I would encourage anybody joining to do the same.
So for the newbies coming in, Jeff, again to the SDSIC, you think, what do you think their biggest challenges, or what would you want to hear from them as far as their needs to go from zero to to hero, if you will, but just getting started?
Well, you said, I want to start with what you ended on that statement just for a second.
Yeah.
Please understand, doing this and doing this successfully can make for a person to have a successful career and kind of springboard them into other successes. Right now, that's a double-edged sword, right? Because as they move up their company and their tiers or their rungs, sometimes that pulls them out of the SDS landscape, and so it's kind of a win, kind of a bittersweet at times. But to go back to your question, the hurdles moving into this, going from zero to hero, great question. One of the hurdles is always going to be content, right? Content. But a lot of what, Trevor, you have done and you guys are doing with the SDS toolkit, you've gone a long way of addressing a lot of that content. Is it 100%? No. Is it intended to be 100%? No. Should it always be evergreen? Absolutely. But not just the tools, the libraries that you have, but also reaching out to other people that's done this for years, more than a decade. They're going to have a tremendous amount of information to share, lessons learned, tips and tricks, that all comes from doing it the wrong way or the hard way and finding better ways of doing it, right? So I mentioned earlier, don't do the journey alone. I fully mean that. Reach out to the consortium, lean on them, right? But the hurdles is going to be content and training your people, getting a power user or champions in your company to do it, right? And then you have that, and then you have the other hurdle of legacy data, right? What do you do with brownfields? I understand it. I can see it for a greenfield. What do you do for a brownfield? Well, brownfield's really no different. You can have a hybrid solution when it comes to 2D versus 3D. You can leave, if it's a large enough station that has enough of different areas and other bays and stuff like that, you can leave those 2D drawings 2D and interface and just create the place that you connect to. Make that 3D so you can have everything up from that point in 3D to leverage the advantages you get from 3D, right? In some cases, you may have another bay almost just like that one that's in 2D. Well, you may want to have the conversation with your client. If you are the client, you are the utility, make the decision, hey, do you want to copy this over there to make it the next job that much better with very little impact when it comes to dollars and cents by doing that. So the other part of that would be, addressing brownfield. And so that's one half of the coin on brownfield. The other half of the coin on brownfield is LiDAR. Man, LiDAR has grown leaps and bounds over the last 2 years by itself, right? And some of the things that you can do with LiDAR, with even translating some of that data and have it automatically find the library part and drop it in. Trevor, I think you had something on LinkedIn here about a week or two ago talking about how close, you guys are getting to some of those things. So, LiDAR is the other piece of the puzzle when it comes to that legacy data in brownfield.
That's great advice, right? It is the number one thing, I think, is content. That's the number one thing we hear from somebody just getting the software. It's training and content, right? And I know you guys, so, obviously, Jason Philpott, Tim Timler from your team, these guys are just rock solid, right? They're always at our SDSIC doing presentations and things. So what do you guys do for training? I mean, how do you get your folks up to speed? Is that still a major challenge, or do you have enough expertise now?
No, training, it's one of those things like anything else. The more you do it, the easier it gets, and the more streamlined it gets, right? And so a lot of times, and training's different with of PNC as it relates to substation. You wouldn't think it'd be that much different, but it's different, right? And so for us, we found that we have a collaboration space in our building. So we have moved a group of people down to this collaboration space, which is an open workspace format, and allow them to work together as they put together the libraries, as they work on the first implementation of a job for a new customer or something like that. And doing that helps that information flow back and forth where somebody say, oh, hey, where's this at? And John Doe can say, oh, it's over here, or how did you do this? And that open and collaboration environment really helps that learning process. So it's not just the formal training, right? And we do a lot of that formal training in-house. Now, if we have somebody new on board that has never done AutoCAD Electrical or Inventor, we will send them out to a vendor that does that training, right?
Okay.
Let them go out and get that base training. Then they come back in here, and even some of that base training, we've worked with them to get some of that more specifically focused on utility work rather than some, oil and gas or something like that. Because you do that, it loses a little bit of its value. But anyway, that formal training gets done outside of our company in most cases. Then we bring it internal, right? And we work on that internal training, and then we move right into projects. Because one of the things that we've learned over the almost last 2 decades, right, that if you go to training and don't move right into a project, you lose the value of some of that training, right? Mm-hmm. And so you really have to work on the timing of lining those things up and lining them up the right way to get max value. But that works well for PNC substation. We still send them out to external training, but then they come in and we do an internal training that's much shorter. We don't necessarily break them up into a different section because they're going to go off and work on a substation probably by themselves or with a mentor in the same discipline on a project. And so you have 2 guys working together here on one project, 2 guys working over here on a project after a quick training, but it accelerates their learning curve, right? And they get up to speed much faster. And that's the 2 ways that we've really kind of focused on the training aspect of bringing new people in, and whether you're new coming into it or whether you have an established work team, bringing new people up and having a scalable model is extremely important.
That's great advice. Great advice. So one more thing, Jeff, so we talked about training and content. One of the big challenges, I think, for a lot of folks that aren't really at a senior level, and having somebody with expertise and experience as yourself, what kind of advice would you give to folks that are trying to get buy-in within their organization to make the shift to 3D or to make intelligent PNC or any of that stuff?
Yeah, so I may not be the best person to ask that question, at least part of that, because for us, even before we started Ampirical, we already knew that we were invested in 3D intelligent software, right? We already made that transition. So also being a part owner of Ampirical and my other partners being completely bought into it, we've never had to really kind of scale that wall as it relates to getting buy-in from upper management. Mm-hmm. But the other piece of that is when you start that journey and you start trying to get that buy-in, again, I want to encourage you to lean on the SDS consortium. We have a leadership committee, and one of those purposes of that leadership committee is supporting people like that needs that support in that, right? But I guess the biggest thing I would communicate to you is doing the first station or second station, you may not see a windfall return on the first station or second station, right? It's going to be the third and the fourth one. And even those may not be huge savings, right? You're going to continue to save for sure. And you have compounded savings or compounded successes. And that's really what I'd focus on, because the next time you come into that substation to do work on it, you've already done it in 3D the first time, that's where you see the windfall, right? That's where you start building those compounded successes on top of each other, right? And the ease and the use of getting that out, getting the bill of materials out, and the time frame that really streamlines that process and that project. That's where the big wins are, right? The other big win is not having the changes out in the field. And I think that's one of the things that I'm seeing on our side of the house on influencing operations. Having the 3D model out there in the work trailer for them to have access to minimize those change orders and this, that, and the other, again, is going to be another tremendous win and a windfall when the more we do that, the more we can collaborate and leverage that.
Yeah, great advice. I think you just nailed one of the key things is setting expectations, right? I mean, that's one of the critical things in getting started. We've seen in the past, I think we've had some folks going in thinking they'd have it all automated in the first project and, save half the time and all that good stuff. But that's a really, 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 really tough way to go and really hard to get there. So great advice.
The other thing I was going to say is that if you're trying to get wins with upper executives and this, that, and the other, show the value of what you're doing, is pick a voltage class or configuration type that you're going to have several coming up, so you can show that compound of success from one to the other, right? And how each one gets better and better and better. And you can do that, and it's going to drive profit to the bottom line that you can then show upward executives. And once you show them that, then be careful and go ahead and put your seatbelt on, because they go on it for everything, right? But once you do that, you kind of set the hook, you got it hooked, and the rest of it's going to be figuring out how do you get the people and the resources trained up and ready for the work that's coming, which is very exciting.
Well, I really appreciate your time today, Jeff. That was an amazing conversation, and we'll get this recorded up on the SDSIC site for folks. So as we close out, just in summary, and kind of hit on maybe one big piece of advice that you've either read in a book or you'd like to give to some of the members listening to this.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, it's been my honor. I always enjoy talking with you and collaborating with you on different things, different topics. The one thing I guess I would leave with you today on something, and that is always be learning. Never, ever stop learning. I've never understood. We go to college, we learn from books and this, that, and the other. Then we get out of college and some people don't want to read anymore, right? Never understood that. And so I would say absolutely read, learn. If I've always adopted the philosophy, if I can learn from somebody else's mistake and help me not make that same mistake, that much closer to where I want to be. And so I'll leave you with this, just the top 3 books. I was going to give you one, but I'll give you top 3. Top 3 books right now is probably Extreme Ownership by Jocko. He's a SEAL, Navy SEAL. They never ex-Navy SEAls, right? They're if you're a SEAL, you're always a SEAL.
Right.
But he's got Extreme Ownership. Really good first read on that one. Then he's got a follow-up book called The Economy of Leadership, which I actually like more than Extreme Ownership because it balances a little bit. You can actually have too much ownership in some cases. And so 2 really good books. And then the other one would be A Team of Teams. It's also done by another military person. And the way they go about it, they actually uses some of the stories and situations they had in real life situations. That sticks out on that one was the blue on blue situation inside that book that he had to take some ownership in. But anyway, 3 really, really good reads that will not just be good for you now and work, but it'd be good for you in your private life, in your personal life. So that would be the 3 books I'd recommend right now as top recommendations. But really, I would end on this, Trevor. Mm-hmm. I mentioned it earlier in our conversation, and that would be, you do not have to do the journey alone, right? We have people, part of the SDS consortium, been doing it for multiple, some of us in some cases 2 decades, right? A lot of us have been doing it for a decade. A lot of lessons learned, right? Don't do the journey alone. If you heard nothing else I said today, leave with that one. And that is not to do the journey alone. You don't have to.
Yeah, that's a great message, Jeff. And I think a lot of people would agree with you out there. I'm reminded of, I think Albert Einstein said, he hasn't failed. He's just found 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. So I think we've got that collective experience amongst a lot of our members. So they can learn from the scars that we all have. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jeff. That was a terrific conversation. That was a lot of fun. And I just want to say, as a small plug for Ampirical, that we're recording this session and all of our podcasts over Zoom. And it is Ampirical, and thanks to Jeff Spence, that we had sponsorship to pay for Zoom, because the SDSIC is, of course, a nonprofit. So thank you again, Jeff.
Again, my pleasure to be a part of it, Trevor. I'm only a phone call away if you ever need anything, or if anybody listening needs something. I'm only a phone call away. Give me a buzz.
Yep, everybody can reach Jeff Spence on the SDSIC website. It's sdsconsortium.com. You get in there, you can find Jeff, look up the member, you'll see his email, you can contact him through there. Thank you for listening to the Power Up Podcast today. If you enjoyed this conversation and you're not yet a member of the SDSIC, join for free at sdsconsortium.com. Be part of the community and all these great conversations. And maybe you'll be the next guest on the Power Up Podcast.